Today, I bring you two stories of events related to the Ouija board, and we've titled this first story The Spirit of the Ouija. Juana's house was a multipurpose place. It served as a beauty salon and a gossip hub for the town. According to some, it was also the right place if you wanted to communicate with a spirit. People said that late at night, Ouija sessions were held in that house. Juana, a 60-year-old woman, was the town's hairdresser with 4 daughters who were also manicurists and involved in various beauty-related activities. They were reputed to be the best in the area for nail care. As mentioned earlier, the house was the meeting point for the most gossip-prone women in the area. It was where the hottest information circulated, knowing who betrayed their spouse, who was someone's lover, who engaged in illicit activities in the town. In short, those women knew everything. One afternoon, Marina came to get some beauty treatments, but truthfully, she was more interested in gathering information than beauty services. Marina was married to Santiago, a very handsome man about 10 years younger than her. Marina was convinced that Santiago was cheating on her, perhaps with someone in the town or a coworker. Her female intuition assured her, but she had no evidence. Every time she accused Santiago, he would dismiss her as crazy and paranoid. So Marina had made it her goal to find the evidence that would unmask her husband. Marina asked Juana directly, "Do you know anything about my husband's infidelity?" But Juana adamantly denied knowing anything. Juana told her to wait. Later, Cecilia would arrive, and she was sure to know if there was any infidelity or not. After all, Cecilia worked in the same company as Marina's husband, but in this dear house, nothing is discussed. "You know how dear you were to me, and I wouldn't allow any gossip in my house," was Juana's usual mantra when someone asked for information or talked about gossip. After a while, Cecilia arrived, and after a thorough interrogation by Marina, she finally provided some information. "There's a girl who started working in the company about a year ago, but she's a troublemaker. In fact, they say she's already broken up 3 marriages. It seems she likes married men. Truth be told, I've never seen her with Santiago. But who knows?" Marina started to cry, and everyone sympathized with her. "Maybe we can help you," reassured Juana. "Tonight, we're going to do something here in the house, something intimate, something no one should know. If you want to come and participate, you're welcome. Maybe you'll find a solution." "What is it?" Marina asked, curious and composed. "I can't tell you anything now. If you want to come tonight, and you'll see." As night fell, Marina was at Juana's house, ready to do whatever it took. Juana took her to a room at the back of the house, and there were already 4 other women waiting. Distinctive women from the town, women no one would have imagined being there. In the middle of the room was a round table with a Ouija board on top. The table was surrounded by 6 chairs. 4 of the chairs were already occupied by Juana's daughters, and a larger circle surrounded the table of the 6 chairs. In this larger circle, the other women who were already waiting took their seats. Juana kindly asked Marina to sit with the ladies who were waiting while Juana finished preparing everything. More people arrived and also took their seats at the center table. 2 chairs remained empty, and Juana stood. She began reading from a small red book, what seemed like a prayer, and her daughters gently placed their fingertips on the planchette. The planchette is the small triangle used to mark letters. After the prayer, Juana started mentioning the names of her deceased parents, other names Marina didn't know, and finally, the name of Cecilia's deceased husband. According to Juana, these would be the light beings assisting in the Ouija session. Juana asked the spirits if they would answer questions from the attendees that night. The planchette pointed to yes. Juana called 2 people at a time to take their seats and place their fingers on the planchette. Marina patiently waited for her turn. People asked all kinds of questions. Some wanted to know if they could leave the country. Others asked about inheritance papers. Some wanted to communicate with their deceased relatives and know how they were doing. Marina was the last. Perhaps Juana left it that way because of the embarrassing nature of the situation. When Marina sat down and placed her fingers on the planchette, the pointer started moving rapidly, faster than Juana could write. The message was very simple. "I'll solve your problem if you come to the cemetery and have a drink with me." Juana was a bit uncomfortable with that message, as it was her deceased husband talking and inviting another woman to drink. They say the deceased hadn't been a very good person in life. He had spent several years in prison for theft and had mistreated Juana and her daughters a lot. They said he spent all his money on other women. This situation seemed a bit awkward to Marina, but she didn't say anything, thanked them, and discreetly left Juana's house. When she arrived home, her husband Santiago was also arriving, drunk as a skunk and covered in lipstick marks. That infuriated Marina so much that at midnight, she was jumping over the cemetery gates with a bottle of liquor in hand. The cemetery was somewhat illuminated by a kind of public lighting they had installed. She searched for the grave for a while but couldn't find it. Just as she was about to give up, she felt a force guiding her to a specific place in the cemetery. It was a dimly lit area, but for some reason, she felt she needed to go there. She followed that intuition and finally found the grave. There, in front of Juana's husband's tomb, she opened the bottle of liquor. She poured more than half of the bottle onto the grave and then took 2 long sips of alcohol. She cried bitterly for Santiago's betrayal, and suddenly, she felt as if someone was in front of her, close, very close to her face. So close that she could smell their breath, a fetid breath mixed with alcohol. But there was no one, she was alone. She began to shiver. She felt as if something invisible was embracing her. Rage turned into fear, and with the same speed she entered the cemetery, she jumped the fence and ran home. Right away, she stepped into the shower, but she still felt as if someone were watching her. She continued to experience that tingling sensation as if an energy enveloped her. That night, she slept on the sofa. She wasn't going to lie next to the traitor who had betrayed her with another woman. Marina surrendered so completely that she didn't even feel when her husband left for work. When she woke up, she felt as if she had the flu, her body feverish, and she had no strength. She dragged her feet to the kitchen to prepare some breakfast. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. The bus from her husband's workplace had a serious accident, with 1 person dead and several injured. A feeling of guilt overwhelmed Marina. She imagined that it was her husband who had died. Marina rushed to the accident scene, and upon arrival, she was told that her husband was okay. He had only suffered minor injuries. The one who had died was a girl, apparently the one he had been cheating on her with. The husband recovered and returned home days later, but with his return, strange events began to occur. The husband changed jobs and now worked as a night security guard. Marina still felt that presence, a presence that never left her for a second. At night, she felt as if someone was lying next to her. On the first day, she thought it might be the habit of sleeping with Santiago, and as always, he lay down beside her. She felt the same sensation. But then she even saw how the mattress sank next to her, as if a person were lying there. She had a recurring dream of a man whose face she couldn't see touching her inappropriately. She was terrified, had no energy, but couldn't tell anyone because she was afraid people would think she was responsible for the accident. Marina began to fear that the spirit of the girl had returned seeking revenge. The group that gathered at Juana's house couldn't stop speculating if Marina had been at fault or had something to do with the girl's death. The people in the town kept their distance, talking behind her back about how much weight she had lost and the cadaverous look she had. Marina went to several doctors, but none had an explanation for those symptoms. Marina became so ill that they had to take her to her family's house in another city. Marina was almost skin and bones when a neighbor of her mom came to visit. As soon as she saw Marina, the lady exclaimed, "This must be an obsessed spirit that has attached itself to her." They brought in several shamans, and after many rituals and spiritual masses, they discovered that the spirit was the one controlling the Ouija board. That wasn't Juana's husband. It was a dark spirit that had inhabited that house for many years. That spirit never incarnated, never was a person, and that's why it lay next to Marina. It caressed her, wanting to experience what it was like to live in a body. But besides that, it also fed on Marina's energy. The same suffering from betrayal, then the guilt for the girl's death, fed that lower astral spirit with those negative energies. It was never found out if Marina had anything to do with the girl's death. Marina recovered but never returned to the town. Her marriage with Santiago ended. He became an alcoholic wandering the town, living off the charity of neighbors. Now for the second story of the day, we've titled it Alicia Played with the Ouija. When Alicia was in high school, a friend's father died in a tragic accident. Alicia was very close to her father, and the news affected her deeply. Unfortunately, her parents had divorced just over 3 years ago, and she felt some resentment towards him. Resentment that later turned into deep guilt because she hadn't spoken to her father for several months when he died. During those years, the use of the Ouija board became popular, so someone suggested doing a session to see if she could communicate with her father to ask for forgiveness and say goodbye to him. At that time, our school didn't have a field for physical education, so we went to a vacant lot about 6 blocks away from school. Next to the lot was a semi-abandoned train station, and on the other side, there was a small forest. One afternoon, when it was our turn for physical education, we were all waiting for the teacher, but he never showed up. So, we stayed there talking and listening to music when suddenly Alicia and 3 others approached. They knew about my interest in paranormal topics and wanted me to be the master of ceremonies or the monitor to take notes and lead the opening and closing prayer in a Ouija session they wanted to do. But I refused vehemently. I believe that everything in life has to have a limit, and regarding the paranormal, that's my limit. The Ouija board is my limit. I've never wanted to sit in a Ouija session either as part of the board or as a monitor. I've never wanted anything to do with that tool. They insisted a lot, but I refused. The most I agreed to was to accompany them to the location. Another person with me accepted the role of master of ceremonies. We went to the abandoned platform and Alicia took a yellow folder with letters drawn in markers from her backpack. Honestly, I was a bit skeptical. I didn't think that the rudimentary and improvised board would work, but I stayed anyway. My friend also brought a candle, but they didn't have a planchette, so they improvised and found a set square. They lit the candle and used a book of selected prayers by Allan Kardec for the invocation prayer. They started asking questions, but the improvised planchette didn't move. Alicia's face showed obvious disappointment. The other attendees sympathized with Alicia and told her not to worry, that they would keep trying. She let out a sigh and said, "Sure, he doesn't want to talk to me," and 2 huge tears welled up in her eyes. Immediately, the improvised planchette marked yes. Terrified, everyone raised their hands and stood up. They began to blame each other for moving the planchette. Since they weren't sure if it was one of them, they decided to continue playing. This time, the planchette began to move and respond. The supposed entity answering the questions identified itself as A, just the letter A. The entity was a 13-year-old boy who had died and had also lost his father very young. He had taken pity on the girl. He was willing to answer any questions. The kids were excited about the contact, and although everyone was there for Alicia, they quickly began to ask their own questions. One asked if the boy she liked would marry her. They answered yes. Curiosity was activated and everyone continued asking. Until they got tired of answering questions and A spelled out Alicia's name, signaling that it was now her time. Alicia could finally ask her question. "Is my dad okay?" "Yes." "Can I talk to him?" "No." "And it's spelled out tomorrow at 12. At 12 noon? "No." And the planchette went straight to goodbye. Sad but hopeful, Alicia put away the makeshift board. Everyone realized they had taken Alicia's time and they felt bad, so they all promised to meet her at the platform at midnight. The next day was Saturday and there was a classmates' quinceañera party, so the party would be the perfect excuse to leave the house at that hour. I didn't plan to attend the meeting because, as I said at the beginning, the Ouija board is my limit for these paranormal matters. But one of my friends, also my neighbor, had only been able to go to the party because he was going with me, as his parents were extremely strict and only allowed him to go because he was with me. He was one of those sitting in the Ouija circle and didn't want to break the promise he had made to Alicia. So, at 11:45, we left the party and everyone went to the old platform. As we walked through the city, everyone was talking, laughing, but as we left the city limits and left the streetlights behind, the laughter faded away. Everyone began to adopt a more serious behavior. The night was dark and there was no moon. Finally, we arrived at the platform. Quickly, Alicia took out her candle, some matches, the Ouija board, and the set square. Soon, everyone sat in the circle and started the session. This time, as soon as they placed their fingers on the set square, it began to move. "Alicia, my love, I love you." Instantly, Alicia burst into tears. "I love you, Dad, I love you." So, they decided to take a break for Alicia to compose herself. Alicia was really upset but wanted to continue communicating with her father. So, as best as she could, she composed herself and they returned to the session. Alicia asked, "Are you here?" "Yes." "Are you Dad?" "No." "It's A." "Can I talk to my dad?" "No." The air began to feel different, like static. Everyone began to experience chills. Everyone began to get scared, but Alicia kept asking, "Where is my dad? I want to talk to him." "No," it replied. "Why?" "I want to talk to him." Desperation began to take hold of Alicia. Suddenly, the candle they had lit, which was about 5 or 6 inches tall, melted in 1 second. We were all stunned. An unexpected blow shook all those in the circle. They abruptly pulled their hands off the set square and stood up. Except for Alicia. Gripped by panic, Alicia began to scream and cry. She couldn't detach from the board. It felt like invisible hands were grabbing her wrists and wouldn't let her go. Amid the chaos, another attendee pushed Alicia and lifted her off the ground. At that moment, there was a sound like that of a large animal running from the forest to the platform. Immediately, I and the other 5 ran like never before. Alicia and the other 3 ran to the right, going to their neighborhood, and my neighbor and I kept running to my house. We were both horrified, didn't sleep at all that night. My neighbor and I were altar boys at the church, and the next day we were the first in line to confess. Before entering the confessional, the others were entering the church, except for Alicia, who belonged to an atheist family. The priest scolded all of us and, as penance, sent us to mow the grass in the yard of one of the parishioners, and we wouldn't serve at the altar for a month. We all took communion that day, seeking protection. And before going home, we all took a container of holy water. The truth is, we couldn't recover from the fright. The next day, we saw Alicia arrive. She was different, very quiet. When we tried to talk to her about the incident, she asked us not to. After that, Alicia didn't return to school. Weeks later, Alicia's sister told us that Alicia spent the whole day locked in her room. They could hear her talking softly and crying. One day, while Alicia was in the bathroom, her sister managed to enter the room. There, she found the makeshift board and set square, which functioned as a guide. There were many notes written, nonsensical things, drawings, until she found a sheet, apparently the last one she had written. It said, "Your father died because of you, your father died because of you, die, die, die." This repeated line after line. Quickly, she went to get her mother to see why Alicia was taking so long in the bathroom. The mother, with the help of Alicia's uncle, who arrived at that moment, managed to break down the bathroom door. They found Alicia lying on the floor with a package of her grandmother's blood pressure pills. Immediately, they took her to the hospital and managed to pump her stomach. They removed all the pills and had her hospitalized for some time. She underwent psychiatric treatment for several years. According to the doctor, all that happened was a nervous breakdown. After she left the hospital, they changed her school, and when she saw us on the street, she would just greet us and continue on her way. Nothing related to the Ouija board was ever mentioned. But those of us who were at the platform that night know that something paranormal happened there. And that's it for today. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for your likes, for your subscriptions. Thanks for being there every time we publish new content.